Welcome to Showdown. I'm Mark Kaysen, and it's Wednesday, and that's the 11th of September. That's one day after the big debate, and I hate to tell you, poor Donald. He did everything I thought yesterday except for one thing, and I guess figuratively, he sort of did this too. But the one thing I did suggest he might do is end up on the floor in the fetal position. But that one would have to just be figuratively because he was a disaster. And it's sad what happened to him. And a lot of people pointed to the fact that Kamala looked sad, really, for him. She was looking at him, and she really felt sorry for the man, which you would have to feel sorry for him because we know his history. She explained it very well. She talked about his $400 million and the subsequent 6 bankruptcies, since we all know that Donald Trump, unfortunately for him, and he forces us to say this because it is true, which we know he doesn't like what's true, but at any rate, it's true. He's a loser. He's been a loser all his life, lost in Atlantic City. I keep saying the university lost, but let's face it. You can't call that a university, but nevertheless, it was a name they had on it. And you know, his tie business, his steak business, every other business, all failures, except for Mark Burnett's business, which, well, okay, that was Mark Burnett. Mark Burnett made the television show work. And Donald got money for the TV show for years. And if he had 1 ounce of sense, he would have just kept doing the TV show, collecting, I don't know, they talk about $500 million. I don't know what it was. But in any case, he got this crazy idea that he could be the president of the United States. And honestly, he did have the title for 4 years. And we are so fortunate that we went through 4 years of his lunacy. And we made it to the other side, and Joe Biden was able to step in and fix the mess. And it was a great fix. Joe Biden's going to go down in history as certainly one of the top presidents, not Roosevelt, neither Franklin nor Teddy, not maybe George Washington, who really started our country. Not maybe a few others along the way. We can throw Lincoln in there too. But here's the deal. Although I have some reservations about Lincoln, but that's all right. Lincoln did bring us through the Civil War. So yeah, let's put him in there too. But Donald, let's not forget, and Kamala very generously did not mention last night what barely came out of the mouth of Joe Biden because he was struggling to get it out, but it was the truth. And that is the 154 scholars who yearly review who are the best presidents of the United States from the whole bunch. And of course, they find Donald every time to be the worst president in the history of the United States. 154 scholars. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. The worst. And they put Joe Biden at 14. Not bad. That's pretty respectable. And over time, we'll see where that comes in. He might even go higher because he accomplished in 4 years what many presidents don't do in 8 years. Just excellent. Capable of passing things with very little support in Congress, just barely enough to get things through. And he really helped people, helped the country. And ultimately, look what he did in Europe. That's not any minor thing that he accomplished. It's not at all. In fact, it's one of the greatest things of the 20th and 21st centuries, aside from winning World War II. But winning the peace was the next point. And winning the peace required a tremendous alliance between Europe and the United States, which, we know that the United States has fabulous productive capabilities. And the world needed this. The world needed somebody to lead. And here we are. And we did it. And we did it for 75 years. It's a long time, 76 years. We were very successful. And then after Donald Trump did everything he could to tear down NATO, in walks Joe Biden and strengthens the alliance by bringing in 2 brand new, powerful countries, Finland and Sweden, with borders on Russia and armies that are capable of helping to protect Europe. And listen, that's all that NATO's about. Protecting Europe. A major goal in all of this because, listen, Vladimir Putin wants Europe. He at least wants back the territory that was lost, which had been part of the Soviet Union. Now, remember, the Soviet Union took that land in the first place. And now those people wanted independence and they went back to where they were. And now, a number of years later, Putin has decided, like Hitler, that he would step in and take over Europe. It's more than that, too. I've said, because I think also it has to do with Vladimir Putin believing that he could take over the United States in what would essentially be one of the most effective buyouts of a country, of a company, of any entity. One of the greatest buyouts in history, because he could have the United States for essentially nothing if he could just get Donald Trump elected again. That's what he needs. And he says that he supports Kamala Harris. Give me a break. We all know better. We know what that's all about. Say you're for Kamala Harris and hope maybe a few people will vote against Kamala Harris because the Russians support her. It's silly. It's about as silly as Donald. But Donald's, a lot of things. Silly is one. Ridiculous is another. Maniacal is another. Dangerous, though, is really at the top of the list because, well, you heard what Donald said last night. He was talking about his friends in the world. And who did he point to? Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban, the leader of Hungary, who jails journalists, mistreats everybody in his population. I mean, you can't say a word against Viktor Orban. If you do, you could go to jail or worse. I'm sure he can arrange for you to go to Siberia by working with his very good friend Vladimir Putin. So what do you got here? You got Orban, you've got Putin, you've got Lukashenko from Belarus. You know, these are all people who lose elections but get to be the leaders anyway. Then you've got a whole network of people throughout Russia and throughout a lot of these different areas where the Russians have taken over territory, and their goal is to take more because they see the opportunity in their minds that they could take Kyiv and then go after Poland. And once they could get Poland, well, they could go through the entire Baltic region and just take over everything and then be the Soviet Union again. That's his goal. You know what Putin has said, that the greatest harm, that the most disastrous event in the 20th and 21st century has been what has happened to Russia. So he wants to reestablish himself, and somehow he has gotten control of Trump. Shouldn't be too hard to figure out how, since Trump's broke and needs help from somebody. And there he is. There's Putin ready to help Donald. Pretty sensible. But all of that ran into a buzzsaw last night. And the buzzsaw is named Kamala Harris. Because here's the thing. Kamala, well before she became vice president, had shown herself to be a brilliant woman, a lawyer, a prosecutor, an attorney general, a senator, who was able to ask questions in critical situations. And last night I had mentioned that, you know, if she could find a way to ask Donald questions and force him to answer things which he could not possibly answer, and which he would be forced to say things that would be crazy, that would be the greatest for her. Well, I was a little off, but not too far. She didn't ask questions, but she did force Donald to jump up and try to rebut certain things that she said, which really had the effect of asking Donald questions, which he then had to answer, and which he handled so horribly for himself. For himself. First of all, over and over yesterday, as he always says, Donald said that immigrants are murderers coming into the United States. They're insane. They come from insane asylums, that they are destroying our country. They are pushing crime up in the United States to unheard of levels. And of course, he explained also last night that the subsequent consequence to this was that the crime in these other countries was falling to the lowest levels ever because they were sending all their criminals here. And their criminals would come here and they would explode crime to levels unheard of in American history. And we would be on the verge of total destruction. Everything in the United States would be stolen. The country would go down the tubes. It would be the end of America. Only problem with this is none of it is even remotely true. In the first place, crime in the United States is at a 50-year low. Now, I was wondering yesterday, I thought to myself, gee, couldn't Kamala just say it? She could say it once and then move on. But, she was probably smart, and her handlers were probably smart in guiding her in this direction. And that is to not comment on the stupidity that Donald was spewing with regard to crime, because the rest of the debate could have easily been spent with Donald screaming back at her that the typical, liberal, she's lying. And how do you prove? You can't prove that you're lying or not lying. You can't prove any of it. Can't prove a negative, and you'd be stuck with it. And I guess that's what she decided not to do. But what she did that was the same, it was the equivalent, and it was incredibly effective, is she said things that required him, not because he was forced to, but if you remember the discussion yesterday we had about being unable to contain himself. And that was what happened. He couldn't contain himself. Because if there were one thing that he shouldn't have said yesterday, just one, I'm sure that all his people would have said, this is it. Sure, everybody in the country would have said, this is it. One thing that he should have never said: the Haitians are coming to take your dogs and eat them. No, it's really on the same level as Hillary, where they said that Hillary was in the basement of the pizzeria eating babies. None of it's true. Of course it's not true. It is lunacy. And thankfully, Kamala didn't have to really respond in that way of saying that it wasn't true, because the moderators handled it. They handled it very well. They were 100% correct in saying that the city manager in Springfield, Ohio, had responded to ABC News that none of it happened. There were no dogs or cats or any pets that were being eaten. Am I really saying this? Is anybody saying this? Who would respond to this craziness? Who would respond? Who would be talking about their dogs being eaten? No one's eating dogs. No one's killing people at the border. Insane asylum people aren't coming across and trying to vote. None of it. Zero. But it was all handled perfectly. Very nicely done. Brilliantly done. Kamala was a genius last night. I know a lot of people are saying, well, she got the endorsement of a great entertainer. Really? That's all that it's about? I don't think so. I understand that there are these fans, the fan base is maybe ready to come out and support Kamala. I understand. The Swifties, I get it. Well, I say I get it. I guess I really don't get it, because I have to admit, I don't even know who Taylor Swift is. Somebody said, yeah, who's Taylor Swift? Do you know? And I said, I don't know. She sings a song or something. Okay, that's just me. I mean, I don't know. But I really think that's what she does. She sings a song. I guess it's a little more than that. But I really don't care. If she's got millions of followers who want to vote for Kamala Harris, go for it. That sounds good to me. But I don't even think that part is necessary, but it's always good to have another million votes. So, okay, I'm not saying she should turn it down or anything. That's not what it's about. But what it is about is the sickness of the other side over on Earth 2 that's talking about the people who are coming to take your dogs. And Donald really kept going on it. I mean, he didn't just say it. He said, look, they're going to come and get your dogs. You won't have pets left. They're going to be eaten by Haitians. We all know that the whole Haitian thing in itself is a giant attack on black people anyway. First of all, it's not true. No Haitians are eating dogs or cats or any of that mess. But Donald's going to keep saying it. I don't know what he thinks he's getting from it. Any normal person that hears this is going to say, wow, that's weird. Eating dogs and cats, is that true? No, it's not true. Of course it's not. So you can take that and just toss it out. I mean, should we be worried about the pet story? Probably not even close to as much as we ought to be worried about the Viktor Orban story. Now, he came in and he just told everybody he loves Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban is a dangerous dictator. That's a guy that has caused huge chaos in his country. They arrest journalists. They do bad things. They hurt people, seriously hurt people, along with Vladimir Putin, who poisons people, kills them, sends them to Siberia, and they show up dead somewhere in the middle of sub-zero weather. This is all craziness. But leave it to Donald. He didn't stop there. He had plenty more to say. For example, Kamala Harris hates Israel. And not only does she hate Israel, but she will destroy Israel if she's the president. In fact, he said within 2 years of Kamala Harris being president, there would be no more Israel left. That's what he said. You believe that? I mean, if you do, you are firmly on Earth 2, because that's crazy. Kamala Harris made it clear, but beyond that, she didn't have to. She has been a strong supporter of Israel along with Joe Biden. But she also said something else that I keep saying here, and forget what I say here. I talk to people every day, and I have said for years that if you don't have a two-state solution in which Israel's security is protected and the dignity of the Palestinians also protected, and then also, if you heard her, I mean, I didn't hear people saying anything about it. But she talked about how we're going to have to rebuild Palestine. And we are. We're going to do exactly what the United States did for Germany and for Japan after World War II. We're going to rebuild all of Palestine in the same way that we helped the Israelis to build up their country. And then it won't be far behind that when Kamala and team will be rebuilding Ukraine. And it will cost billions, no, trillions of dollars to do this. And it's the smartest thing that the United States could ever do. Win the war without ever sending anybody over there to fight. Let the Ukrainians win it themselves with our top flight weapons and then rebuild their country. It will be a tremendous process, and it will again show the brilliance of people like George Kennan, George Marshall, Harry Truman, all these people from the 1940s who figured out what we did wrong after World War I and decided we would never do it again. We weren't going to punish anybody. We would rebuild everybody. Some people say, what? The United States has to be the police person of the world? Absolutely, yes. That is our job. And we have been outstanding as the policemen of the world. We've been great. We've been effective. We've rebuilt countries. We've established peace arrangements. I always remind people that Egypt was the leading country against Israel. 1948, 1956, 1967, 72, on and on. But in 1980, it ended because the United States made a deal. The United States said to Egypt, we'll give you $1 billion a year, just like we do for Israel. And all you have to do is leave Israel alone. And that's $1 billion a year. And Egypt said, sounds good to us. And that was the end of it. Costs a lot more money to fight people, you know. $1 billion a year was a bargain. We could buy some other countries at that price. Of course, we have some people who are afraid to do it. We have others who have led the way. And it's been an effective program for building our friends around the world. It works. It's that simple. It works. Donald talks about how he would have some discussion with Vladimir Putin and the war in Ukraine would be over. Well, sure. All he's got to do is go into Vladimir Putin and say, okay, you bought me. Now, here's what you wanted. Ukraine is yours. Zelensky, you better go somewhere or you're going to be in Siberia. I mean, that would end it. And I'm sure Donald would do it. And Kamala didn't have to go into any of that. Not even necessary, because Donald was tearing himself apart anyway. As you well know, if you watch that debate, Donald was asked, do you want Ukraine to win? Now, they didn't say, are you willing to spend our last dollar to do it? They didn't say what kind of risks or ask what kind of risks you would be willing to take to do it. They just asked, do you think the United States should win? Simple answer. No answer. Asked him again. No answer. Every time he was asked, his answer was, I want the killing to end. Well, sure. So does Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin wants the killing to end. He wants his people not to be killed anymore because there's too much killing, in his opinion, I'm sure, of Russians. So I'm sure the two of them could work out a deal to end the killing. But in the meantime, Donald's not going to answer that question. He's just not going to answer because he would have to say, I want Russia to win. And then he wouldn't be president of anything except for what I always say he will be president of, because I do think there's a good chance that he will, in the end, be president of the Prisoners Association. That I do believe. But as far as anything else, I think he can forget that. You know, I was talking to my good friend Alfred Montgomery today, and Alfred won his race. We've talked about this before, but Alfred won his race here in St. Louis against Sheriff Betts. And so my good friend and student, Alfred Montgomery, will be the next sheriff of the city of St. Louis. And it's just a great story. And, you know, it's terrific when great young people get into politics and can win. And Alfred's done it. And who knows where he's going in all of this, because he's got himself a great job, and he's going to run that office in a very effective way. And he's going to use that for future political advantage. And there's no problem with that. I mean, if you're the sheriff of the city of St. Louis, nobody thinks you're going to be the sheriff for the rest of your life, but he's going to get some work done over there. He knows what to do in that office. He was a deputy in that office, and now he's going to be the sheriff. He won. Donald Trump can't win an election. His people can't win. There's just no way. Donald is nothing. He's nobody except for a loser. That we know. And he won't tell us what he would like to see in Ukraine, because we know what he wants to see, and he's not going to tell. Surprised he's got the good sense to hesitate on that one. Of course, he doesn't have the good sense to talk about Israel and how Kamala hates Israel. And you know that Kamala Harris does not hate Israel. The Democratic Party loves Israel, is doing everything they can to support Israel. And they believe, for the most part, almost universally, a few not, but almost universally, they believe that protecting Israel requires respect and protection for the Palestinians. Not to allow the Palestinians to come in and do bad things to Israeli kids and women. That's not what that's about. And everybody knows that's not what it's about. We'll see some of this handled, worked out over time when we get some investigations after there's a deal made there. And for all we know, I know Joe Biden's trying to make the deal, and he's made some great deals. But if he can't make this one, I'm sure Kamala will. And when she does, if she's the one, well, she'll get enormous credit as a president who has done things that no one else could do. But I will remind you that if she does it, it will only be because Joe Biden has set the stage for this. So you got to give Joe Biden his credit, even if he can't get the final pieces put into place, because you know that the only reason that Hirsch Goldberg Poland died is because of, unfortunately, Israeli right-wing insanity. Sort of like Donald, sort of close. Not as good as Donald. Donald's crazier than the rest of them. Donald's the craziest of them all. And the most dangerous of all, because he had in his power the levers of the United States of America. Quite a powerful country. Although he says that we've been diminished to the point of nothingness. And he doesn't say it that smartly either. He just says crazy things about us. He doesn't like us. In fact, ironically enough, he hates America. That's what this is about. The man hates the United States of America. Well, Earth One anyway. He hates what we became after World War II. Don't ask me where he got all of this hatred and misery. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. Maybe Mary Trump can tell us, because she is a psychologist. And whatever is wrong with him, it has to do with some kind of psychological decline. It's not like Joe Biden, who is having problems with speech and getting out his words. No, it's 1,000 times worse, because here's a guy who has words which essentially match Adolf Hitler. And again, Kamala didn't even have to use any of that. She showed people what Donald is. She didn't have to say it. She showed them. She did talk about the military leaders who have said, which she looked right at Donald and told him, that the leaders said that Donald is a disgrace. And she made it clear that he is a disgrace. Well, he is. What does he want to do? He wants to honor the people who tried to tear down the Capitol of the United States. He wants to honor them. He wants them out of jail, and he wants to honor them. I mean, he told us last night what he wants to do. He loves those people. But the amazing part of it is, on one hand, he says he loves them. And then on the other hand, he says he has nothing to do with them. They attacked the White House. It wasn't him. He wasn't in charge of anything. He didn't have any power to stop it. Of course, we all know he told them he was going up with them, and the Secret Service wouldn't allow him to go. Or he'd have been there. Who knows what that would have led to? But it is true that Donald is talking about these people as heroes, saying they are hostages and that he's going to save them. And then in the same breath, he says, well, I didn't tell him to go and do any of that. Any of what, Donald? You didn't tell them to do what? Because they did something that you say you didn't tell them, and then in the other breath you say that they didn't do anything wrong, that everything was fine. Obviously, it's not both. Either they busted into the Capitol, broke everything up, and Donald says I had nothing to do with it, or they didn't do anything. Well, we know what they did. So Donald's just the same old thing. And Kamala said this, and it was right. The man is a liar. That's all he does. He's a liar. So while he's a liar, here's what we're going to be. We're going to be eaters. We're going to eat at Wendy's. That's 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road. And that is a fabulous restaurant where they've got wings, smoked meat, hamburgers, cheeseburgers, patty melts, salads, pizza, really good pizza. The best drinks. Mine is iced tea, but everybody picks their own. But I can only tell you the iced tea is exceptional. And then I'm going to tell you they've got baby back ribs and onion rings. And if that doesn't get you something that you want, I'll be shocked. But it will. You'll be happy at Wendy's. And then you'll also be thinking about Defiance, Missouri, because there's a second Wendy's. That's the Wendy's Roadhouse in Defiance, $29.99, South Highway 94. Same great Wendy's food, same great environment. You'll never be unhappy if you go eat at Wendy's. Now, if you're looking for jewelry, you go to 4506 Hampton and you get Jewels on Hampton, and they will do everything to be sure that you get the greatest jewelry buys that you could ever have. They buy and sell jewelry. They buy and sell coins. They'll fix your watch. Really, they're experts when it comes to fixing watches. They're jewelry designers. They're very good at it. Essentially, though, what it amounts to is they'll do whatever you need when it comes to jewelry. They'll take care of you. I say they. Al and AJ, they're the team, and they're good. They're at 4506 Hampton, and that is Jewels on Hampton. And of course, here I am with my suit, shirt, tie, all looking good because I go to the St. Louis Suit Company in Clayton. And I was with Freeman Bosley Jr. last night, and he was admiring what I was wearing. And I told him, of course, that I got it from the St. Louis Suit Company because they're the best. And, you know, they're also my advertisers. I love them. And they have great merchandise. And Freeman said, I go there all the time. What are you talking about? Well, certainly everybody does. Of course. That's why they're there for 30 years. St. Louis Suit Company has shirts and ties and suits and shoes and overcoats. Don't forget the overcoats. Absolutely an important time of the year to get overcoats. Fall starts, what is it? Today's the 11th, and in like 11 days. And boy, do those days go fast. You know how long it took to get to the debate? Not very long. And now the days before the election are into the 50s. I mean, we are rapidly moving toward this amazing election where Donald Trump will say when he loses that it's rigged and that they stole it from him, and he'll go crazy. I don't know how long it's going to take to establish that Kamala has won. But Kamala will win. It's obvious. I mean, she's got all the momentum in the world, and she's picking up supporters by the day. She's done a great job. She's stepped into this and done it in a way that has inspired America. And you know, I've said, and I do believe this is possible, that by the time this is over, when we get to her inaugural address, we might find that we've essentially got a female John Kennedy. This woman is inspiring the nation. And I don't think it's going to end on election day. I think she's really got something going. And, you know, yesterday, when she did that debate, she was so perfect. All of her language was measured properly. And I've said this all along. I'm going to say it again. As a political speaker, as an orator, she has got a perfect tone. Her pitch was excellent. She just hit the right notes all down the line. And if you have ever heard her in a Senate hearing, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because she has done this every time. And I said that last night, and she walked right in and did it. And then we've got Donald talking about World War III. And think about this, you know, this lunacy about World War III. No, nobody's going to start World War III, because if you do, it's suicide. Vladimir Putin has been threatening World War III for over a year. Threatened it recently again. But it's all nothing but a threat, because he can't do it. He can't possibly implement it. We all know there is no way to win World War III. No one can do it. Not us, not Putin, not Xi, not anybody. Those weapons are too powerful. They can destroy the planet. It's not happening. There will not be World War III. But there is no question that Donald has an extremely dangerous program that he's pursuing. One which is outlined perfectly in Project 2025. And, you know, he said again last night, but we all know, because we played the clip where he invited the Heritage Foundation to create Project 2025. Now he's scared and running, but he invited that project. Now he says, I don't know what it is. I've never heard of the people. I know nothing about it. And then he added, and I don't want to know anything about it. I'm not going to read about it. I'm not going to find out about it. I don't want to know. La, 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 la. I don't know. Come on. Like we're all stupid. He's only the smart one. I love when he talked about his great connection to Wharton. I mean, nobody was going to say it. Kamala's not stupid. She didn't take the bait. But you know that his Wharton professor has said that Donald Trump was the worst finance student in his history at Wharton. That's what the guy said. You can tell me it's politically motivated or something, but I guess that's the story. Everybody who's against him, it's all politically motivated. Woe is Donald. He's such a great guy, and everyone is just trying to tear him down. He's the victim. Wonder if anybody's eaten his dog. or if he's planning to eat his dog. I mean, it's just so dumb. The entire thing. I mean, don't you consider it an insult that he went into that debate if you're on his side and he didn't even have the courage to walk in there with a plan for anything? You know, they got into a healthcare discussion, talked about Obamacare, and he explained that Obamacare is no good and that it's wrecking the lives of all these people that access it, and that he really wants to replace Obamacare, and he just needs to come up with a plan to do it. And then the moderators said or asked, hey, Donald, when will we get this plan? Because Donald said, it's coming very soon. I mean, the only thing he didn't say is, I'll unveil it in 2 weeks, which is his usual lie. Instead, he said, very soon, I will unveil my healthcare program. And they said, well, give us an idea. What's it like? He said, well, I have concepts of it. You all, this guy has said over and over, I've got a healthcare plan. In 4 years, we never heard it. I've got an infrastructure deal. In 4 years, he never did it. I'm going to fix everything in the world. In 4 years, he fixed nothing. He only wrecked things, wrecked them. As for COVID, certainly he hid the truth of COVID from his people. And we know it because we've got him on tape telling Woodward that that's what he was doing, hiding the truth about COVID. He admitted it. Not only did he admit it on tape, but after he admitted it on tape, when Woodward used the tape, Donald turned around and sued Woodward, which Woodward doesn't care. Woodward's got his releases signed. He knows what he's doing. He's like the top journalist in America. Think he doesn't know how to do an interview? But Donald doesn't know how to do anything. He's always blindsided by everybody because he's the victim. He's the victim. He's supposed to be the greatest deal maker in the history of the world, but somehow all he ends up as a victor, a victim, a victor. See, and you know what else? And see, that's pretty good too. That's pretty good because, hey, we've talked about this a million times. You can go through talking like this and so forth, and you throw out one wrong word. Joe Biden was throwing out many wrong words. He couldn't handle it. But everybody says something wrong now and then. Donald, last night, said things that were so disastrous for himself. Well, anybody supporting him, trying to advise him, would have done anything to stop those words from coming out of his mouth. But, this is not a gotcha deal on Donald. This is far worse than that. Gotcha would be if Donald said the wrong word and then said, gee, I made a mistake. No. Donald made a mistake, okay. He got into politics. That was his mistake. He doesn't have a health care plan, and he told us last night. He'll have it shortly. Didn't say 2 weeks, but he'll have it shortly. That was nice of him. To himself, because if he'd have said 2 weeks, they'd have destroyed him. They were destroying him anyway. But if he said 2 weeks, they'd go into this and say, that's his whole story. Everything's in 2 weeks. All these things in 2 weeks, but nothing happens. He's got no plan for anything. And he couldn't even prepare for that debate, which Again, what an insult to his people. All he had to do is prepare. Instead, he comes out talking about eating dogs. You would think that by itself would be the end of his candidacy. No, really, imagine. Imagine if Kamala Harris had come out last night and said that Donald Trump and his people are eating your pets. Well, she'd be disqualified immediately. Nobody would allow that. You couldn't allow somebody like that to be the president of the United States. This is not a word. This is everything. What the man says is crazy. That's the problem. Kamala hates Israel. We're going into World War III. I can't tell you whether I'm for or against Ukraine to win. The U.S. is a failing country. All we're doing is going down. And by the way, the moderators are the ones who did this to him last night because they fact-checked him. And listen, they only fact-checked him on 2 or 3 things. It was less than a handful. But the key to it, and this is really one of the best ones of all. I mean, there's so many things he said, but try this one on for size. Democratic states wait until 9 months, and when the babies are born, they execute the kids. Now, I have to tell you that I spoke to somebody today who is a Trump supporter on Earth 2, and he said, Kaysen, that's true. Democrats, wait for the kids to be born and then murder them. They execute the kids. And I said, no, please don't say that. Don't say that. The fact checkers pointed out that there is no place in America where it's legal to kill your children when they're born. There's nowhere. I mean, it's laughable. It is so untrue. And yet Donald said it because he'll say anything. Really, think about it again. He says the Democrats, not Republicans, Democrats, they have children, they get pregnant, they have kids, and then when the kids are born, they're sitting there with a child. They call the doctor in and say, hey, could you do me a favor and kill this one for me? Do you understand how stupid this sounds? They don't do it. It's like Hillary eating babies in the basement at the pizzeria. That's how dumb this is. Who would want to be tied to this idiotic story? And yet, I'm telling you, the person that I had this discussion with today is really a smart guy. A smart guy who I really like a lot. And I like him no matter what. I mean, even if he does believe this crazy story, now I will continue to believe that he has a similar mental defect to Donald that's unfortunate. We don't kill babies when they're born. I don't care what else you've got about what happens in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks. I'm telling you, we don't have kids born and kill them. But I will say this. You can go to Wendy's to eat dinner. You can go to Jules on Hampton and get some beautiful new jewelry. Or you can get great clothing at St. Louis Suit Company, where they'll help you with your wedding as well, because they're great on wedding attire. And in the meantime, I'm Mark Kaysen. This is Showdown. Good night.